All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be covering today a video from Chippy Reviews. This guy ended up putting out a video talking about an upcoming bill that has been proposed in U.S. Congress for something called the Kids Online Safety Act. The reason why we're talking about this is for two reasons. Number one, the recent censorship that we've been experiencing with Steam, Itch.io, and obviously, Collective Shout, NCOs, all these groups that are out here advocating for the censorship of legal fiction. And not only that, number two, what happened recently in the UK with the supposed age verification nonsense that's happening over there, that number one has been easily destroyed by a multitude of different workarounds. And number two has been proven to be more than just about the supposed safety for the kids, right? The whole nonsense about think about the kids. Yeah, that doesn't really compute here. So we're going to check out his video. I'm going to link it in the chat, and I'm also going to link it in the description box below of this video, as well as in the pinned comments, so you guys can go give him some support and check out this video. Let's see what it's about. It's about an 11, 12-minute video. Let's check it out.
So let's get everybody up to speed to current events before we talk about this bombshell that came out today and a lot of people are starting to talk about and find out about. So about a week and a half ago, Steam removed hundreds of games off their platform for payment processors like Visa and MasterCard, all in the name of brand protection. It was so powerful that Steam was forced to add an entirely new policy to basically say, we will kiss your boot, payment processors. We will do what you say. If you want us to remove any game that you think is going to hurt your brand, we will remove it instantly. Steam basically bent the knee. A few days after that,
one thing I hate about that is all the people who are gaslighting and saying, oh, they were just holding Steam up to Steam's old terms of service, right? The people who were advocating for the censorship, they were trying to say, well, it's because, Collective Shout was basically holding Steam up to their own standards, their own terms of service. But that's not true. Steam didn't have a terms of service when it came to payment processor obeying. They didn't have it. They added it in after the fact, and people who are trying to pretend like it was always there, it wasn't always there.
Itch.io did the exact same thing. They removed their entire adult game catalog, thousands upon thousands of games. Customers, people that bought these games were discovering that they were no longer able to either play the games they bought, download the games they bought. You had developers that realized that they were no longer going to be able to make money. They lost their livelihood, and it left everybody confused until hours later, Itch.io made an official statement saying that payment processors like Visa and MasterCard and also Collective Shout were responsible for why the entirety of the adult catalog had to be removed.
And on Saturday Night Hypnosis, we had a discussion about Collective Shout and about Itch.io and their statement against Collective Shout. I got to tell you, looking back at it now, looking at this statement from Itch.io, you can say what you want to say, but when I'm reading this as a call for help. That's honestly how I'm reading this. I'm reading their statement from Itch.io as a call for help, because the fact that they actually name dropped Collective Shout and said that they launched a campaign against their company and Steam, that's pretty big and ballsy. That is some information that is normally not disclosed when something like this happens. I mean, look at Steam. Steam didn't disclose any of that, but Itch.io is saying that, well, no, it was these people. They were the ones who did it. They're the ones who are campaigning. They're the ones who are causing the problem. The fact that they're pointing the finger, I feel like, is very important information.
What this brought into question for everybody to see is that these payment processors like Visa and MasterCard have way too much power. They are straight up a mafia or cartel capable of controlling the entire world when it comes to cash flow. And if Steam, a massive platform like Valve and Steam, cannot even fight back against payment processors, it's pretty much the end for any other smaller business that is trying to sell fictional content. Because,
well, they know that, right? That's the beautiful thing. They know that most people, let's say 98%, 99% of businesses are not going to fight against the duopoly that is the payment processors. They're just not going to do it, either because they don't have the means or they don't want the smoke. Either or, they're not going to do it. Steam was one of those companies that absolutely could have done it if they wanted to, but they just didn't want to. Not right now anyway. They definitely have the size capable and the money capable, but the truth is, if all the payment processors said, we will stop servicing Steam, then Steam will be royally fucked for the amount of time that it would take them to figure out a solution. That's the truth. And that's the real reason why they said, you know what? We just got to do what we got to do so that we could sell other content that is still available to the platform. to our customers and keep business going. I get it. I totally get it. But if everybody were to say no, the payment processors need you to make money. You don't need them. They need you. You're the one selling stuff. They're the one processing it. So you guys technically need each other. And if one of you were to all say, well, I'm done, then the other side will be screwed. The payment processors as well.
Steam is massive. Anyone that plays games on their PC is aware of Steam. They use Steam.
Obviously,
it is the main go-to. And if they can't fight back, it's basically over. But obviously, this news got a lot worse. First off, after all of this happened, a few days later, the United Kingdom's had a law come into effect called the Online Safety Act.
What are the chances that all of this is happening at the same time? Right? Like, I really feel like things do not happen for no reason. Obviously, I feel like we're all aware of that. And even though the UK, the Kids Safety Online Safety Act, even though that's been planned for a little while now, the fact that all of this is all happening at the same time, I just find it to be extremely suspicious.
First glance, this law was meant to protect children, which in a perfect world, that's fair. That's fine. Makes sense why you would want to protect the kids.
Yeah, sure, it makes sense, but it's never about the kids. Let's be real. Of course it makes sense. They know that. Like, they know that it makes sense. They hope that by you hearing them say, oh, think about the children, this is about the children, that you're not actually going to look into, research, or ever try to understand what's actually happening in the bill that they're trying to tell you is about the children. Right? This is why they do what they do, because they know that most people are not going to look. Most people are not going to care. Once they hear, oh, it's about the children, protect children. Yeah, of course I want to protect children. I'm not the kind of person that doesn't want to protect children. You know, they immediately go for the emotional grab.
Internet access and being able to find things that are, let's just be honest, really bad online. However, when it comes to any government, any organization, or any company, usually something like this that restricts people is typically not used out of the goodness of their heart. It is not used in good faith. It is used to control and have power over people. And in this case, the United
100%.
Kingdom restricted the entire internet for everyone a part of their populace, where you can no longer access the internet without providing an ID. For instance, identification of either your face or actual driver's license. You couldn't get on Discord. You couldn't get on Twitter. You couldn't get on YouTube. You get the point.
Everything was shut down, basically. You had to go through age verification for damn near everything. If you were in the UK, people were posting screenshots of all kinds of shit asking for age verification. And keep in mind, by the way, they're trying to tell you that they're not going to keep your information, that they're not going to keep your pictures, that they're not going to keep copies of your ID. But let it be known that's absolute BS. Because if you guys are not aware, recently there was an app called T that got all its information taken because it was openly available, unfortunately for them. But all the information was taken, and they themselves even said that they weren't going to store selfie pictures, ID pictures, or any of that, and it was just used for verification. Lo and behold, that was not true, and everything was in fact stored. So don't believe a single word anytime they tell you, oh, we're not going to keep this stuff, we're not going to store it somewhere. Yeah, it's complete bullshit.
The majority of the internet was locked down thanks to this law coming into effect, but this law also started to leak in and affect people in Europe as well. And you're probably wondering to yourself, how is this even relevant if you don't live in, let's say, UK, or you don't live in Europe? Well, we're going to get into that one in just a moment, because as you can see on screen, this is related to the United States. So after all this happened in UK, in under 24.
All right, so now we have this is the point of the video, right? So now we have the brand new Kids Online Safety Act. This is something that is extremely similar. That was proposed a couple of months ago, I believe like 2 months ago. It was proposed, and it's very, very similar to the UK Online Safety Act. They're trying, except in the US, of course, they have to use the kids in order to push this as far as it could possibly go. So let's see what he has to say.
For hours. Once that happened, once this law came into effect, it wasn't used to protect kids. They started to create an entire situation where they were starting to monitor. They made a police monitoring task force to go to people's doors to basically arrest them or question them if they say anything that is against what the government actually wants you to say. So
that is insane. And I remember this happening when they said that an elite police squad is meant to monitor anti-migrant posts on social media. I remember that. It's so
basically
crazy.
They're using the law that was meant to protect kids to now censor people online if they have anything that goes against what the government wants you to say. Scary stuff. Basically, the UK overnight turned into a massive police state. There's a lot of people talking about this. Even Stride Ice, a big ReZero leaker, He even comments on this, talking about the situation on how it's been getting bad for years now, but it's gotten even worse thanks to this situation. But getting into the main point here is that this was the start. It's very clear that there is an acceleration of censorship in just this last week and a half. Now, I've been covering this topic for way over a year now about payment processors and what's happened to like DL Site, what's happened to Pixiv, what's happened to Manga Library Z. I've been very, outspoken about the whole situation. But now that this situation has
been happening for a long, long time, and it's only going to continue to get worse. But of course, like most things, gaming is usually the last thing to get affected by whatever has already affected the rest of entertainment. And this is what's happening now.
And so massive that it's starting to affect not just gamers, but pretty much entire countries. It's very clear that there is something more going on, especially when you take a look at the new bombshell that came out today, and a lot of people are now starting to talk about. So this right here, as you can see on screen, that's been on the screen since the very beginning, is called S1748 Kids Online Safety Act. This is the official congress.gov site. This is an official governmental site ran by the United States. And
you guys can go see this for yourselves, by the way. If you were to look this up, you could go see it on congress.gov. S.1748 Kids Online Safety Act. In case you want to read more and learn more about it, please consider checking it out after you watch this video.
And this is a bill that has been introduced into Congress back in May of this year, just a few months ago, 2 months ago. And it's been relatively gone under the radar, not noticed whatsoever. Nobody was really aware of this until today. And I am talking about the situation because it's incredibly important, because this bill, ironically enough, is titled the exact same way as the bill that just came into effect in the United Kingdoms. Online Safety Act. That's what passed the United Kingdoms. Kids Online Safety Act. Definitely similar. Now, you could chalk it up to saying that, there's only a few words to really describe what the bill is trying to do, but it's very apparent that there is definitely something going on. Call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but anyone seeing what's happened in just the last week and a half can all agree that there is something massively going on with censorship and just these governments' push and these organizations and companies' push to censor fictional media, to censor the internet. It is,
and it makes you wonder, why? Why do any of that? Right? Why censor all the Gooder games? Why censor all of this stuff? Why? What's the point? Right? So let's say all this stuff goes away. What changes? What happens? Does the world suddenly become this beautiful kumbaya fucking place? No, obviously not, right? So what is the play here? What is the point?
Legitimately concerning. And that is why I'm speaking up about this, because it is actually insane to see such a massive acceleration of censorship. But we got to get into what this bill actually is. So at this current time, this bill was introduced relatively recently. It's just only been introduced. It hasn't even passed Senate, hasn't passed House. It's not even been to the president. It hasn't become law. But one of the big things I want to talk about when it comes to this bill that was introduced is that this is the very same government that is refusing to release the Epstein files, the Epstein list.
True.
They're refusing to drop names of.
Well, actually, no. It's even worse than that, right? So there's refusing to give out the names of this list, right? There's refusing to talk about the list. And then there's one step even worse, which is after all this talk about the list being real, and after all this talk about XYZ people being on the list, and after all this social media parade about, XYZ influencer has a copy of the list or whatever, all of a sudden now, well, the list just doesn't exist. There is no list. There is no spoon. That's even worse, in my opinion, right? That's even worse. If you were just going to flat out say, well, we don't want to release the names, then people could just attack you for not wanting to release the names. But you just went from, oh, we have names, to, oh, well, there actually is no spoon. There is no list. The list doesn't exist. It's all I was like, what? It's just ridiculous.
That harmed people, that actually assaulted people. They're refusing to name drop actual criminals. Our government is protecting actual criminals and people that harmed kids. But this bill gets introduced. And looking at the track record of what we have seen in just the last 20 or so hours from the UK, thanks to their bill being introduced on the name of protecting kids and brand protection, basically,
It's always about the
it's
kids.
very obvious it's not about protecting kids. It's about censoring the population and knowing what you're doing at any given moment. And that's exactly what this bill is. It's a Trojan horse disguised with its optics to protect kids.
That's extremely well said. It is a Trojan horse. And the truth is that a lot of the laws that get enacted that supposedly is meant to protect people or protect children or whatever nonsense, all these laws they get enacted, they're all Trojan horses. They're all Trojan horses to see how far they could get to the gates of Troy. And they're just waiting for that one Trojan horse to convince everybody to be let through the gates of Troy, and then you're fucked. That's really what it is. People have been spotting the horses. Some of them got closer than others, but all it takes is that one horse to get it through the gates, and you're done.
Not about that. When you start scrolling down and you look at the text on what this early bill has outlined in it, there is some things that obviously sound good, but then things start to become very questionable when you start.
Well, see, what they do is they start off with things that they know is going to make people feel good and think good things about the bill, and then they hope that everybody who doesn't bother reading the rest would have just read the beginning and thought to themselves, oh, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. That's what they bank on. They bank on people being too lazy.
Realizing that there's some things within this that outline that they want to add, obviously, age identification with ID, very similar to UK, but they start talking about overusage of online. For instance, time limits. For instance, time limits as maybe you might be only able to use the internet for 2 or 3 or so hours until your internet access is completely cut off. And then on top of that, they talk about how
I'll be fucking damned if I'm paying XYZ amount of money for internet access and you motherfuckers want to come out and say, oh, you're only allowed 2 hours on the internet. Get the fuck out of here, bro. What do you think? This is China? Get out of here. Who do you think you are? Do you think that's even going to remotely work here? Absolutely not.
there would have to be yearly inspections. There is literally a clause in here, if you go down, that talks about.
Actually, think about it. I wouldn't be able to do my job. That's the crazy thing. I do 2 gaming streams a day, 2 to 3 hours each, and then I do a hypnocast 2 to 3 hours every day as well. So I'm streaming anywhere from, let's say, 7 to 9 hours a day. And then obviously, I edit my videos, upload them and all that shit. So like, I wouldn't even be able to do my job. Like most people wouldn't be able to do anything if you were to limit, your streaming time or your internet time to 2-3 hours or whatever. It'd be fucking impossible.
Every website on the internet that has like a certain amount of traction in viewers or users, they are supposed to disclose the information and the records and stuff to the government about basically how many people are using it, or if there's, people are using their IDs or minors, whatever, anything like that. Just disclose the information to the government, which is already concerning. Now, let's be honest. The government already knows who we all are. I mean, okay. But the thing is if they're grabbing all this data from you and they are actively getting your, identification on these different sites, it builds a internet footprint. It builds, a footprint on what.
It's eventually going to lead to a social credit score. That's really what it is. Like right now, we have a regular credit score based on your habits of paying things back and taking out loans and whatnot. But when they gather this amount of social data on you, when they gather all this data on you, it's to eventually introduce something that's going to be similar to a social credit score. And if you are basically wrongthink, if you are somebody who is problematic in terms of, being against what the government says or does, if you're any of these things, well, I mean, it ends up being a situation where you get scored so low that you can't get anything. You can't get a fucking house. You damn near might not even be able to get a job depending on your social credit score. That's what they're trying to aim for. That's what they're trying to do by garnering all this information. There is no reason. I'm telling you right now, unless it's something illegal, there is no reason for the government to care about who you sleep with in bed. There is no reason for the government to care about how many video games you play. There's no reason for the government to care about who you talk to or whatever the case may be. Unless, of course, again, if it's illegal, you're fucking talking to terrorists or something, that's something different. But otherwise, like, there's no reason. The only reason they want to gather this information is to eventually go to the point of social credit score. That's the only reason they want that information for.
you've been doing, and they're able to know what you're saying, what political party you're on, what side you're on, how you feel about something. It's obviously going to be used as, to, see what you're doing. Surveillance, basically. That's what's going to happen. And so this bill is, the optics of it is being disguised to protect kids, but it's very obvious that's not what it's about. It is way more than that. It's literally doing the exact same thing that the UK bill did and has been passed, because let's just be completely blunt. If someone brings up the question, so you're telling me you're wanting to oppose a bill that is supposed to protect kids from seeing very questionable and awful things on the internet.
That's called gaslighting. I'm glad he said it that way, because that's literally how all of these psychos that are pro censorship on X, they try to phrase it in that exact manner. They try to gaslight you. They try to say, oh, so you just want kids to be able to see whatever the fuck it doesn't matter. You want them to be able to see porn. What are you, a PDF file? They try to do everything they possibly can to discredit you, try to make it as inflammatory as possible, try to get people to just get this initial emotional reaction and say, no, I'm not a PDF file. No. They try to make you freak out, because that way you're less likely to realize what's actually going on or even fight back in general. That's what they hope to do.
Obviously, when you bring that up into a conversation, it's going to shut down most conversation. People are going to be like, yeah, I don't want to argue against that.
Exactly.
It's like, who would want to be against protecting kids?
Exactly.
It's common sense. But the problem is that is being used as a Trojan horse to get things in, to be able to actually restrict even adults, cause actual issues. So that is the problem here, that this is leading into, as I've already been saying for the last few videos, Shimonetta. We are actually entering into Shimonetta. And it's, I can't believe it. I cannot believe we actually have a bill like this right now in Congress for United States. Now, apparently from what I could dig up, this is something that's been trying to get passed for a while. Like, there's been similar bills over the years, but I want to strictly point this out, that the title of this is the same as the UK stuff. And even with everything that's been going on as of late with censorship, there's clearly a push. There is definitely a significant push of censorship on everything as of late. It is multiple countries involved in this. It's multiple organizations and
Shimonetta is an anime, by the way, for those people asking.
Multiple activists, payment processors. It is legitimately horrifying. And so the question is, what can you do? Well, the only thing I can really recommend is, I'm going to say it.
It's basically Shimonetta, a boring world where the concept of dirty jokes doesn't exist. Just an FYI. It's basically a world where none of this stuff would ever exist. How boring of a world would that possibly be?
Well, your state representative. Like, really, if you're a United States citizen, you should call your senator. You should call your representative and basically tell them you don't want this to pass. Just bring it up and say, this is unconstitutional. This shouldn't exist. Do not allow this to pass. Because what's really crazy about this entire situation is that the people on this bill is on both sides. You have Republicans and Democrats all agreeing with this bill that has introduced it or is co-sponsors of this bill.
Yeah, because it's bro, the idea of parties is really for the people to fight over. When it comes to politicians and governmental entities, the uniparty being an absolute thing, they all try to do this in their own separate ways, right? Democrats try to do censorship for their own benefit. Republicans try to do censorship for their own benefit. But at the end of the day, they're both fucking with you. they're both literally fucking with you. They're trying to do what they can to get what they want and use whatever they can to get what they want. It's happening all the time.
So this isn't, let's say, a one-party issue. It's both sides.
It's never a one-party issue ever.
Get this passed. So don't try to turn this into, oh, the Republicans want to do this. Oh, the Democrats want to do this. No, both sides. It's both sides. Stop trying to fight each other and look at the bigger picture, that there's something going on. So I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry I'm talking about censorship once again, but this is just some really important stuff to talk about. It's extremely important, and I'm glad to see a lot more people are starting to cover this subject, like Asmongold, Mutahar. You have, Bellier News is talking about it. It's really nice to see more content creators covering this, and more people need to be talking about this because it is seriously important, and people need to understand if we just sit around and do nothing, it's going to get bad. It's going to get very bad. I'll leave it at that, though. I love you guys. Thank you.
All right. Well, shout out to Chippy Reviews, man. I'm going to drop his his link in the description box below for this video. Definitely go check it out. If you enjoyed the content, consider subscribing. He did a fantastic job on this video. And yes, he is correct. More and more people need to be talking about this. I got a comment today that I thought was pretty funny on my YouTube channel. Somebody commented and said, how many times are you going to repackage this? And I said, guess what? For you, I'm going to do about another 20 videos. Consider this 1 out of 20, motherfucker. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, consider hitting that like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And I will see you guys on the next one.